Hello and welcome to Get Started with Reusing Everyone Learning Materials, Part 2. My name is Beck Pitt from the Every1 project. This is the second in a series of 5 videos which will help support your use of Every1 Learning Materials. Please do take a look at our first video if you haven't already done so. You can find it on YouTube via the QR code here. This video, Get Started with Reusing Every1 Learning Materials Part 1, covers why and how Every1 Learning Materials can be reused and localized, gets you started with some ideas and examples of reuse, and also discusses reasons why an open license is beneficial and how this can help your work. What we're going to cover today is we're going to take a deep dive look, an in-depth look at different open license types. If you're familiar with and you viewed the first video, you'll know that Every1 Learning Materials are licensed on a CC BY Share Alike 4.0 license. This is one of 6 Creative Commons licenses. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the remaining 5 open licenses in this video. We'll also talk a little bit about what you need to do to attribute an openly licensed resource and some good practices for attribution. So here we have our 6 Creative Commons licenses. You can find out more about these on the QR code to the right here. And you may remember from the first video that Every1 Learning Materials are licensed CC BY Share Alike 4.0. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means now. So with the CC BY Share Alike license, all you need to do is to attribute. If you're not making any changes, you'll attribute the resource, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then if you do adapt the resource and make changes to it, as well as advising people on what changes you've made, and we'll come and give some examples of that shortly, you also need to share the new resource back on the same license as the original. So you may remember from the last presentation that, of course, Every1 Learning Materials are openly licensed, and the CC BY Share Alike license enables you to retain the resource, to keep a copy of it, to reuse the resource, to revise it, to make changes to it, to remix it, to combine it with compatible openly licensed materials, and to redistribute it. So these are the 5 R's which we talked about in the last video here. So let's go back again now and look at the 6 different license types in more detail. And there are 4 elements that make up the licenses, and we'll go through those now. So the first one, as you can see here, is the BY, and you can see this is the requirement to attribute, and this is applicable to it's featured on all of the 6 Creative Commons licenses that we see here. You also, as we saw a moment ago, in relation to the license that's been used for the Every1 Learning Materials, you have the SA, or the Share Alike element, which requires you to share any adaptation of the material on the license that was applied to the original. So you can see 2 examples here. You can see CC BY Share Alike on the left, and then next to it on the right-hand side, we have CC BY Non-Commercial Share Alike. We'll talk a little bit more about that license in a moment, but you can see already that there's another element that's been added to this license, which is the NC, or non-commercial element. And you can see that features on 3 of the Creative Commons licenses. Finally, we also have the no derivatives element, which means that you cannot make changes to the resource and share it. And we'll come on and talk about the 2 licenses that feature that in a moment. So we've already covered the CC BY Share Alike license a moment ago. So that's the license that's been applied to our Every1 Learning Materials. And we'll now just walk through each of the remaining 5 Creative Commons licenses so that hopefully you have a deeper understanding of what these mean when you come across resources which have these licenses applied to them. So first of all, it's CC BY, and as we mentioned a moment ago, this requires you to attribute the resource. So you can make changes to it, you can use it in commercial contexts, etc., etc. But you do need to attribute the resource. We also have our CC BY non-commercial license. So this, again, you need to attribute the resource, but you can't use the resource in commercial context for profit. So you'll see here there is a quote from the Creative Commons frequently asked questions page, which explains a little bit more about that. And this is in instances where reuse is primarily, to quote, primarily intended or for or directed toward commercial advantage or monetary compensation. So again, people who apply this license to their resource are requesting that you do not use it within commercial or profit contexts. Here we can see a combination of the 3 different elements that we've been introduced to so far. So you have the CC BY non-commercial share-alike license here, which requires you to attribute, of course, with the BY element, the BY element here, not to use it in commercial contexts. And then also the requirement that if you were to adapt the resource, you make changes to it, as well as telling people about the kind of changes that you've made to it, you will need to share the new resource back on the same license as the original. Finally, we have our 2 no derivative licenses containing this element. So you see here we have CC BY no derivatives. So this means, again, of course, we need to attribute, but also that you cannot make any changes to the resource if you intend to share your new version of the resource with anyone. So you can use this type of resource as it is. So for example, there might be a great photo that you find that has a CC BY ND license applied to it. If you're using that without making any changes and it's a discrete kind of entity within a resource, that's fine. You would attribute it accordingly. But if you wouldn't be able to make changes to it, make changes to the resource, make changes to that picture. Again, also we see here, we have the CC BY NC ND license. Again, the requirement to attribute, not to use it in commercial contexts, and not to make any changes to the resource if you intend to share the new version with anyone. So this type of resource with the ND element featuring in it, so that's this license here that we saw a moment ago, and the CC BY NCND, means that you can't make changes or localize the resource, and it's often not considered open in the sense of the 5 Rs or the 5 rights that we saw earlier, so that revise, retain, remix, redistribute, etc. Obviously, that remix, revising is not possible with resources that have had this license applied to them. So here are our 6 Creative Commons licenses, just a reminder there. You also have 2 tools to help CC0 and the public domain mark as well, and you can find out more about those along with the licenses here on the QR code and the link on the right-hand side. So you might be asking as well, where can I find Creative Commons licensed materials? Obviously, the Every1 learning materials have Creative Commons license, the CC BY share-alike license applied to them. Within the resources themselves, we've used openly licensed images. So there will no doubt, hopefully, be images that you might find useful to take and use for your own purposes within our learning materials. But there are also millions of CC licensed materials out there, and they can quite often be found via search engines, places like Google. You can also look on sites like Flickr and YouTube and filter the searches that you make so that you are searching for only openly licensed materials. But you can also use something like this tool here from Creative Commons called CC Search, which will enable you to search different types of resources. And I'd encourage you to have a look there and look for other openly licensed resources if that's of interest to you. And of course, really central and important to this is looking for materials that are fit for the purposes that you have in mind, and thinking about what you're looking for and being able to evaluate those appropriately. Wonderful. So we're going to move on now and briefly talk about good practice for attribution. And this is something that's often presented in this acronym called TASL, which is title, author, source, and license. So some really clear information here, which helps us to acknowledge the creator of the resource, give further information about where that resource can be found, and which clearly gives information about the license type and often includes a link to the license, or it's required that there is a link to the license itself so that someone can go and easily find out more information about the requirements of the Creative Commons license. You can see here also that sometimes there are the creator requests certain information is also included in a statement, and I'll come on and show an example of that in a moment. So let's look at some different attribution statements here that follow the TASL best practice. And you can see here we've got an example from the Every1 project, which is for the Digital Energy Essentials course called Why Digitalize Energy. So these kind of statements help us to identify Creative Commons resources and to go and look at the original resource, find out more about the license, etc., etc. You can see here that we've got Why Digitalize Energy, which is the title of the resource. And within that, there is the source, which is often it's hyperlinked to where the resource is hosted. In this case, it's on our Open Learn Create platform. You also have the author, which is the Every1 project, and then the license CC BY Share Alike 4.0, which you can see here. And if you click on that link, it will take you to the Creative Commons page that tells you more information. You also might note here that it says unless otherwise stated. And this covers the fact that, for example, we've incorporated other materials into the slides or courses. So these are materials that are kept as discrete entities within the course or within, for example, this slide deck. We can see an example back here. You can see here that we have on the right-hand side a picture credit where there's information about this image of Creative Commons stickers and license and author information. And this is discrete, it's next to the image itself. You might also find in some materials, and here's an example of a course from some time ago now that I was involved in authoring with colleagues, but in this course, at the end of the course, we have a list of all of the images that have been used within the course itself. And the course also had a CC BY Share Alike 4.0 license applied to it, but it has the unless otherwise stated disclaimer, which enables you then to provide the list of things that you've incorporated into the resource. And this is for things that remain discrete. It's quite obvious that the image is distinct. It's not an example of a remix, and we'll come on and show an example of that in a moment. But you might often see a list of resources like this, which give attribution for anything that wasn't created by the authors of, for example, in this case, the course itself. One example of this is for our What is the Digital Energy Transition course. So this is an adaptation. So this is a Digital Energy Essentials course for Every1, and we used material from the International Energy Association that's on an open license. In this case, it's CC BY 4.0, and we incorporated and used that material and reworked it along with our original content to make a new resource. The course here, What is the Digital Energy Transition? Of course, we need to let people know and attribute that accordingly. So you can see this kind of statement here allows us to say that we have adapted the digitalization and energy report or some of the report content, and that we've made certain changes to it, and the changes are acknowledged here on the bullet points. And then also we've included a couple of required statements from the IEA. So it says here, you can see in the final two sentences that we are solely liable and responsible for the derived work, and it's not endorsed by the IEA. And of course, the CC BY 4.0 license is compatible with the license that we've applied to the What is the Digital Energy Transition course, and there's no license incompatibilities. We'll come on to talk about adaptations in a future video and how we need to ensure that we use compatible material when we're embarking on this type of work. Just quickly as well to show here, you might see, for example, statements which make it clear that it's an adapted version of a resource. This was an image here that has been cropped and had a caption added to it. And this is acknowledged by making a slight change to the original attribution statement, but making it clear that it's been adapted from the Royal Library of Belgium photo that I took. So we'll talk a bit more about modifications, derivatives, and adaptations in the next video, but hopefully that's given you a flavor of the types of attribution statement that you might come across when you're looking at openly licensed resources, and given you a little bit of an indication of what you need to include as well when you create your own adaptations, derivatives, and modifications. But we're going to walk through that in more detail in the next video. So coming up in the next Every1 learning material video, what we'll be doing is taking a deeper look at what you need to do if you want to reuse one of our Every1 learning materials and make changes to the resource. We'll be giving you some practical advice and tips to support your reuse, and we'll be conducting some walkthroughs of and adaptations of different Every1 learning materials. So you can find out more about Every1 on this QR code and the website address there. And thanks so much for your attention and for watching.